I do love my old school racers. Recently I was playing Top Gear for the Super Nintendo. What an absolute classic that is. And I vaguely remember reading that it was the spiritual successor of another series. As great as Top Gear is, and I will cover it one day on here, I thought this would be a great time and excuse for me to finally play and cover it here for the channel. So here it is, Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge for the Amiga. I hope you enjoy. Before we get into the gameplay, we need to take a look at the car we will be using in this, the Lotus Esprit Turbo SE. It's a British sports car built by Lotus Cars, who produced a wide variety of luxury cars in England between the years of 1976 and 2004, but none were as iconic as the Lotus Esprit Turbo SE. They were in production from 1989 to 1993, and 1,608 of these cars were made. The engine is 2,174cc inline 4 turbo, it has 264 horsepower and can reach 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.7 seconds. What a beast. Now let's get this out of the way quickly. I'm no petrolhead, so I don't have a clue what all that means, but it sounds good, and apart from all that, just look at it. Now unfortunately I'll probably never be able to drive one of these, but thankfully this is where this game comes into play. Released in 1990, developed by Magnetic Fields and published by Gremlin Graphics, Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge is the first installment in the Lotus Racing series. There were a couple of Lotus games to come after, but in this video I'll be covering the first game. It was released on various consoles from its time. These included Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum, along with the Amiga. With so many ports to choose from, why the Amiga version then? Exhibit A. Exhibit B. Exhibit C. And last but not least, to be fair to the Atari port, there's a good case to be made that it could potentially be on par with the Amiga version, but after messing around with various versions of the game, I found out quickly that the Amiga port was the superior version of the game, for not only its visuals and sound, but gameplay too. Upon starting the game, you are greeted with the logos of both the developers and publishers. Look at it tempting you in with its headlights blinking at you as if to say, come on big boy, get inside me. Nice touch. You also get a rundown of the car's specs, performance, dimensions and interior. Like I said, I'm no petrolhead, so all this means absolutely nothing to me, but I do know if you're being forced to see a car's specs, then it's definitely a beast of a motor. Now I'm playing this with an Xbox controller. I do know originally these games were designed to be used with a joystick though. I changed my control type to suit my preferred style of play when it comes to racing games, that being one button for acceleration and the analog stick for turning. The other option made it unplayable at first for me. To accelerate, I had to push the analog stick up while also using it for turning. It just felt off to me. Once you have your controls sorted, you now choose from 3 different difficulty types, those being easy, normal and hard. You'll see each difficulty has a different amount of tracks you'll have to race through to complete it. Easy has 7 tracks, medium has 10 tracks, and hard has 15 tracks, bringing the game's total track count to an impressive 32. Now that you're happy with everything, it's time to get into the action, and to be honest, it's exactly what I was expecting with this game, a good old classic racer. The aim of the game is to win races against the other 19 AI opponents across the globe in various countries and cities. You have to finish in 10th place or higher to qualify for the next race. If you place 10th or higher, you'll be awarded with points that go towards your overall score, like how Mario Kart works if you have played any of them before. Here you may notice puns on names from famous racers. Nigel Mansell, as in the Nigel Mansell? Rubbish puns, but I'm sure they spent the majority of their funds on securing the Lotus license itself for the game. Failing to place 10th or higher will result in a game over. Of course, if you start off playing easy mode, it is just that, easy. But it's a good way to get yourself familiar with how the car handles and what obstacles will be thrown in your way while racing. For the most part, I feel the car handles pretty well, but more on the heavy side. I mean, it is easy enough to control, but gaining a high speed once you have found yourself in a collision can be ball-achingly brutal to watch. It is such a rush of adrenaline when you're going full speed that it does become annoying when you lose it. The only time I don't mind losing a bit of speed is when I'm taking a corner though. Some of these you can go full speed around, while others you may need to come off the acceleration for. The only time I don't fully feel in control of the car is when cornering, because the game sort of assists you as you approach the corner. You can feel your car edging into the direction in which the turn is going in. I don't know why this is, but I notice it a lot with these older racing games. Even though you get a slight assist in cornering, you'll still need to push in the direction while cornering. Failing to do so will result in your car edging off in the opposite direction in which the corner is turning in. Luckily you get plenty notice when you're approaching a turn, indicated by the signpost at the side of the road, and the difficulty of the turn is reflected by the number and density of these signs, a feature common to all titles in the Lotus series. You get a heads up in regards to what to expect in each race. You get a race summary before each race begins, giving you the course record, location, laps and distance, along with a track description of hazards you may face. This is great because you'll be going into each race with a rough idea of what to expect. There are many hazards you will come across over each course in the game. These include rocks lying on the road, signs, oil spillages and water. Each hazard will have a different effect on the car if you come into contact with them. For the most part, these are easy enough to avoid, even with the game's short draw distance. Most obstacles in the road come with a warning beforehand in the form of the signs at the side of the road, so you know what's ahead. Some hazards don't really slow you down if you make contact. For example, the oil spillages may just make you skid off to the side. Water will make you lose a little bit of speed, but not enough to make you rage. However, I find the most difficult hazard to overcome are the other 19 AI opponents. These really can become a pain in the arse at times. Sometimes you'll have to have reflexes like a cat to avoid them, even though you can see them in plain sight. They can get in your way, causing you to collide with them, and this sometimes can bring your car to a complete stop. This is when I can feel the car being more on the heavy side as it tries to reach its top speed again. I've only ever seen the other 19 AI opponents as obstacles for a large section of the game, because it's easy enough to win these races, but on the harder levels, if you collide once you may as well start again. It's all fine and well having obstacles for an extra bit of difficulty, but these do not apply to the other AI racers. They go right through them at times. The distance of the track displayed on the race summary actually plays a vital role in this game. It's not as easy as starting a race and finishing it. You also have to be wary of your car's volume of petrol. If it empties, it's game over and you do not qualify for the next race. This is where those guys you see at the bottom of the screen come into play. During the larger courses, there are pit stops that allow you to refuel to continue the race, bringing a more strategic side to the game. Do you fill up while your tank's only half empty, or wait until it's almost fully drained, which will be indicated by a beeping sound if you aren't paying attention to the gauge? This is one element of the game I actually really liked. I'm not going to lie, it did catch me off guard on one or two races where I thought I'd had enough time to get to a pit stop but didn't manage to. Much like the obstacles on the course, the pit stops don't apply to the other racers. You'll never see them in a pit stop refueling. Graphically it looks fantastic, and it is absolutely the look I love to see when seeking out old school racers like this. The Lotus itself is nicely detailed and stands out perfectly from the other 19 cars you race against, which is fairly easy considering all the other 19 cars are grey. Everything stands out like signs indicating turns coming up, along with the obstacles that may be in your way. Which is good considering the draw distance isn't that far, but having items and signs pop out like this makes it fair, so whenever you do miss a turn or bang into an obstacle, it's usually the player's fault. Unless one of the 19 AI racers are being pricks with you, of course. The sights out in the distance didn't really do much for me. Not that you spend much time looking at these anyway while you're racing, but I didn't think they represent each country or city you're racing in that well. It's the first game in the series, so I can let it slide. You probably noticed that only the upper portion of the screen is displaying the race, while the bottom half just shows two guys standing there working on another Lotus. The only other time this will change is when, as I said previously, you enter a pit stop to fuel up. It's probably due to limitations at the time, as in the same thing Super Mario Kart done by having the action take place on the top half of the screen, while the bottom was used for a map, which is fine, but it's probably a good chance to say this game does support 2-player, so if you have a friend willing to play this with you, the bottom screen will be used for player 2. The sound department in this game is a bit hit and miss. Don't get me wrong, the music is absolutely fantastic and so is the in-game sound effects, but unfortunately you can't get the best of both worlds simultaneously in this. After picking your preferred difficulty, you are brought to a screen showing an old school cassette and CD player which is inside your Lotus. Here you can listen to the game's soundtrack and pick which song you want to hear while racing. You also have the choice to have no music playing and just hear the sound of your car revving up and changing gears. If you do choose a song to play, however, you'll sacrifice not being able to hear the sound of your car, only the sound effects of your car skidding round corners, which I find a bit unfortunate as the game's 4 songs are absolute bangers. I understand why they had to do this given the limitations at the time, but I think this game would feel like a much bigger package if you could fully hear the sound of the car revving with the music playing flawlessly on top. The other issue I have with the music in this is if you do decide to listen to songs while racing, whatever song you pick you're stuck with for the full duration of that difficulty you picked. For example, if you decided to listen to track 3 in hard mode, the least you will hear this song is 15 times back to back. I say the least because you'll be retrying these tracks as they do get a bit more difficult as you progress. Upon finishing the game, you are told you have qualified for your Lotus license and given a code and told to refer to the game's manual. I filled it in and sent it away about 6 months ago, and guess what? Nothing happened. But it was to be expected, of course. Has anybody played this back then and actually sent it away? I assume you just get a certificate of some kind, but I couldn't actually find anyone online who had done it before. For the first game in the series, I've got to say it's pretty damn good, and still holds up well to this day. I really like the fuel management element of this game. It made for some tough decision making at times. The graphics look fantastic too. They may not be to your liking, but I'm a sucker for old school racers, and this one hit the nail on the head for me in the graphics department. As I mentioned, I love the music, but I just wish there was a way I could play both the soundtrack and car sound effects at the same time. All in, I really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it to someone who is into their old school racers who hasn't played it before. Next up in the series will be Lotus Turbo Challenge 2, and from what I've seen online, people praise that one very highly compared to this one, so I cannot wait to give it a bash myself. Stay tuned for that one when it drops on the channel. So that brings me to the end of the video. I'd love to hear your opinions of this game, so feel free to leave a comment down below. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing for more reviews of games throughout the years. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this, or even leave a dislike. Either way, it lets me know what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Anyways, as always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one. See ya!